There are two builds of Pikachu you can use in rank that are incredibly strong. The first one is a supportive Pikachu, and the second one is a backline damage carry Pikachu. Let's talk about the item builds on both of them. The two builds share the same two items. You want to have a Slick Spoon and a Curse Incense on both. The reason why you want to have that Curse Incense is you want to be debuffing the enemy's healing effects. Now, for the supportive Pikachu, you want to be running an EXP share, and on the damage Pikachu, this third item is flexible. I personally like using an energy amp, so when I rip my ult, I'm doing a lot of damage to the enemy team. Now let's talk about the first gameplay as a supportive Pikachu. Here you are laning with something else that does some damage. Typically this will be an all-arounder or another attacker. Now Pikachu has got a move called Electro Web. Early game, this is incredibly strong for catching the enemies when they overcommit. Pikachu is a really strong option as an anti-stacker. Now, Thunder Shock is actually fairly decent secure, so make sure you're not using this skill to do damage in the farm. You're using it for secure. And if you secure the farm as the EXP shareholder, when you're next to your teammate, you will be funneling all of that experience into your team. Now, as you can see, it actually manages a Mewtwo Y gank really well because you're able to position yourself where you can do a lot of damage from a distance, and you can, when they overcommit, you can use that Electro Web, and that keeps them stuck into place while you and your laning partner, and even your jungler, if they come up to help you with the gank, are able to get the kill, or you push the Mewtwo so far back that it can't really get much value out of the lane. Now, the reason why I like picking Thunder over Electro Ball is purely because I want to do AoE damage to the enemy, because I'm giving anti-healing effects whenever I'm casting my skills. The second move is optional. Volt Tackle is probably a better option because it sticks one person into place. However, if you want to play it safer, because you will be putting yourself in a compromising position if you're using Volt Tackle, I would personally recommend going Thunderbolt if you are a beginner or a fairly intermediate player. However, if you're playing with a team, Volt Tackle is, in my opinion, the better skill to be picking. And as you can see in this gameplay, we are managing our macro. We are making sure we are at the particular spots in the farm, like that middle farm. We want to make sure we are there doing some damage and trying to get some of that secure at that 8-minute mark. Now, I rotated down to the bottom lane because I had the awareness and I saw that the enemy team was going to push the bottom. And as you can see, the majority of their team is down here. And if I wasn't down here to help my team with the Thunderbolt to defend on this goal zone, then we would have been in a lot of trouble. In fact, we actually got a lot of value out of it because we killed the enemy jungler, who was that Mewtwo Y, and again, you're punishing this overcommitment. Now, the best part about these anti-healing items is that you are able to decrease the effects of the healing that they are getting on their pad when they're trying to defend their goal zone. And Thunder and Thunderbolt are double cast ability that do an amazing job just poking the enemy from a long distance while your team can do the follow-up damage. The Thunderbolt stuns and the Thunder does the damage. So generally, if you're using this moveset, you want to first launch off your Thunder Bolt and then you use your Thunder. Now, it's actually got a half decent secure, but you would probably be using Thunderbolt to try and stun the enemies out of the secure, and Thunder to help your team with the secure. It's great at defending goal zones, as you can see here, but you've got to understand when it's time to give these goal zones up. I got caught out there because I did not expect the enemy Mewtwo to use its Unite move, and I didn't have that mobility to get out of it. So unfortunately there, the Mewtwo Unite move is what got me. Now, do keep in mind your macro decisions when you're using Pikachu. You are holding the experience share as the support, which means that you generally don't want to be farming when you're by yourself. And this is the main difference between the two builds, because a lot of the time you're actually going to be doing an equivalent amount of damage. You'll do slightly more because if you're going the full damage Pikachu, you've got the energy amp, which means that you can farm by yourself and it doesn't really have a compromising effect on the held item that you're using. In fact, it's better. You want to farm the little stuff. But as the experience shareholder, you shouldn't be off farming or doing things by yourself, because you really have no incentive to be getting that farm on your own. You want to be supporting your team with the killing, with the objectives, and of course with the farming that they might be doing. So here you can see I've overcommitted and I'm trying to make sure I'm putting myself in a safe position. I try and get the buff off their Crustle, but I realize that it's a silly move to be that far forward without my team. Also, having the awareness of where your farm is on the map. If your team's not back to take it, obviously you don't want to be taking much of this farm by yourself. However, you are a Pikachu, and getting a level power spike is definitely a useful thing to do. However, if you're going to be farming by yourself, you want to be taking the little bow toys, because that's going to help charge your Unite move the most. You want to be giving all of that big experience over to your teammates because you've got that experience share. You're going to get 30% of it because of how that held item works. So now that we're getting closer to our Unite move, we're able to put some pressure onto the enemy so we can poke the bush. However, the enemy have got the positioning, they've got the players down there, they also have the Unite move, so our team has played it actually quite smart to not go in too deep there. And we're just looking to reset, making sure that they're not pushing our bottom goal zone because that's where they're going to get the value. However, we've got to make sure that we are defending our pads because, guys, when the enemy score, they get a lot of experience out of that. And you don't want to be giving that free experience, and it's also not just the experience, but it's actually the closing in of the score that they're able to do if you let them score, right? So you want to be defending your pad, and Pikachu is a really great Pokemon to be defending the pad with. It's got a lot of great AoE damage that you can cast from a while away, and your Unite move can help do a lot of damage without putting yourself in too much of a compromising position. So it's, look at that, like, although I died for our team's defending pad, we got a lot of value out of it. Our team followed up and got some kills, and most importantly, their team didn't get any score XP, and they also didn't close the gap on scoring too much. They could have easily broken our goal zone there. So again, remember your macro as this Pikachu. You're not wanting to go too deep. Your levels don't matter as much as you might think. What's more important is your teammates' levels. And you can see there we've thrown our skills onto the objective to try and get the secure. But unfortunately the enemy had the better secure there, and our Venusaur didn't have the awareness to have his Solar Beam on cooldown to try and get the secure. So you've got to know when to give up your goal zone. At that point I'm probably 1v4, 1v5. So it would be silly for me to go and try and defend that, because I would just be giving them experience by killing me, and that's less time for me to be farming as well. So this farm is up here, my whole team is dead, so I'm not going to sit around and do nothing. I'm going to try and get some value where I can, because think about it like this with the EXP share. For each bit of farm that you're taking by yourself, you're sacrificing 30% of that experience that could have been, because that's the value that the experience share gives you. So consider that macro. Now, with your Rayquaza prep, generally you're only going to be level 12, and that's a perfectly fine level to be. You should not be pushing for level 13. You're holding an experience share. Think of yourself as a potential defender or a potential supporter. You want to make sure you've got your Unite move ready. You've got your battle item on cooldown. For me, it's my X speed, and I'm not joining a fight unless if I think it's a very good idea. At this point, I don't really want to overcommit with this fight because it's pretty much where the Rayquaza is about to start. So I'm just trying to poke some Unite moves out of the enemy, which we do. We get the Mewtwo Y Unite move out, which is great. You can see it's a close battle, and we want to make sure that we're keeping an eye on the enemy. So the Venusaur and I are playing from the top side, because we just don't want the enemy to be able to rip for free. I can see that they've taken it pretty low, and so we've committed, we've popped our Unite moves, and we do a good job in securing there. I'm not quite sure why the enemy team decided to rip the Rayquaza at that point. However, that's what they chose to do. My team was able to run off. I died. I sacrificed myself to try and hold the enemy up. That way my team can get the score in. So we've secured that objective. We've gotten the score, and we get the value out of that. So hopefully you can see this gameplay as useful and beneficial for using Pikachu with an experience share. Let's look at using an all attack damage carry Pikachu. Now this is the second gameplay where I'm using Pikachu. Here you can see we are laning early. We've managed to get a kill. I'm using the same set of Thunder and Thunderbolt. Now I've been laning with a Ninetales, which means that we've got a lot of presence, we've got a lot of CC, and we can poke the enemy out of the farm. It's probably not the most optimal lane composition, but that's okay. In this particular gameplay, I'm using an Energy Amp over the experience share. And the reason I want to do this is because I want to be ripping out more damage, and I want my cooldown of my skills to be lower. So that's the main motivation here. Now, a couple of facts about Pikachu while we're watching this gameplay. The attack speed of Pikachu does not increase at any point in the game. Attack speed is the same as level 1 versus level 15. This is
fairly unique to Pikachu. I believe it's only Pikachu and Charizard who have this style of mechanic. Now, when you are using Pikachu, you'll see a lot of the time I am panning off my screen to have a look at outside of the radius of that of the screen in which I'm playing. Right now, I want to be doing this because I need to be aware of what's going on. Because you see, when you cast Thunder and Thunderbolt, that's on the edge of your screen, and you need to be able to predict where the enemy is and isn't running out of. Now, admittedly, when you're playing in lane, you shouldn't be pushing past this halfway point. I got very lucky. My Ninetales has saved me there. I overcommitted. In that situation, I probably should have died, but I've been saved, right, by my laning partner. As you can see, I'm panning off to the screen to see where the enemy is with the vision that my teammate is giving me. Right, that's important because I want to cast those skills in an AoE where I'm going to be able to get the most value, right? If I predict a Talonflame's going to move in a particular direction, that's where I'm casting my skills. So a lot of the time I'm panning off my screen to see what the enemy is doing and what their running pattern is. Now the macro with this build is a little bit different because you don't really care if you're farming while your team is not there, because it doesn't really matter, right? You're not going to be giving up that 30% with the EXP share, and you're going to be getting all the farm regardless of whether you secure it near your teammate. And the trade-off is having lower cooldowns and a lot more damage when you are ripping your Unite move. Now, I will say in this particular situation, be aware of what's going on. There's no vision on the enemies. You've got people up in the top lane. We've got 3 of my teammates in the top lane, so it would be foolish of me to overcommit and start ripping the objective straight away. I'm making sure I know where the enemy is and I know where my team is before I start to rip objectives. Here you can see my Mewtwo X is just playing incredibly well. He pushes them far back and we're able to put that goal zone on a low amount of points. Breaking this goal zone with an overcap is very important. You don't want to be breaking this goal zone with an overcap of less than 10 because you're giving up a lot of farm when you break that particular goal zone. Now, your skills will be able to do quite a bit of damage to the Regieleki. You typically want to be saving your Thunderbolt to stun the enemies out of secure and using your Thunder to try and get the secure on the objective. However, there was no enemies nearby and I was fairly sure that the enemies were not going to be coming in for the secure, so I just wanted to rip it as quickly as possible so we can move on and do something different. Now, here you can see I'm just farming up because there is, there's a bit of farm in this bottom lane. And when we are pushing their goal zone, I want to make sure that I am there because this Curse Incense will give me a lot of value and my team a lot of value because it gives anti-healing effect onto the enemy. Right, you can see any time that my team is pushing a goal zone, I'm making sure I'm there to support because I've got one of my 3 held items it is mostly beneficial with my team when I'm playing in those particular spots. So that's very, very important to note when you're playing Pikachu with this particular item build. Right, as you can see, a lot of the time I'm panning off the screen to make sure I'm casting my skills in the correct spot. I'm following this Talonflame around, but I know not to chase if it is pointless. Any dead point on the map, I want to make sure that I am farming and I am defending my goal zone because there's no point pushing their farm if I'm the only one doing so, and they might be able to sneak around and get some of the farm. Here you can see panning off the map with the vision my team gave me was very important. It actually picked up the kill on the Talonflame there. So make sure you're always doing that with these characters, especially the mage characters like Solar Beam Venusaur is definitely one. Mew is definitely another one because typically the range of your skills will outrange what you're able to do. Now, Thunder and Thunderbolt is really, really strong at poking the bush that the enemy can be in. That's really, really strong because it will go off. You don't need to make sure you're locking onto an enemy. Right, again, the positioning you take when you're pushing a goal zone with Pikachu is you don't want to be behind your team in lane. You want to be in their jungle, casting your skills over the wall. Because the support that you're giving your team is that you are essentially doing some damage to them AoE so that the goal zone doesn't give them as much healing. And it's really, really important, right? This is a new concept in Pokemon Unite because of these items. So it's going to make your positioning even more important when you were doing this. Now, throw out that positivity ping because I'm letting my Ninetales know he's been playing absolutely amazing, and I'm making sure that we're just pumping that positivity because we have done a very, very good job. Now, oftentimes you can get confused in the game. Generally, when you're ahead, you don't need to be 5-person pushing everywhere you go. I think that giving the enemy free experience from scoring is it's generally not the best thing to do, in my opinion, because you're letting the enemy get the score experience and you're letting the enemy close the gap on score. You want to keep the pressure on. Now, this is one particular game play that you can make in a game in solo queue, and the more people who know this, the better. You can see the top lane, there is no second tier goal zone, so the best thing you can do with your team in this situation is wait until about 2 minutes 30 to start attacking this Regieleki, right? Because if you complete the objective now, then the Regieleki could be walking into the enemy base, but they have time to defend it before the Rayquaza objective. You want to make sure that this objective is secured by your team at about the 2-minute 15 mark, so it takes about 15 seconds to walk down through the enemy top lane and walk into their base goal. If it walks into their base goal, your whole team scores for free. It's essentially like a mini Rayquaza. So as you can see, I'm kind of calling my team here and saying, hey, we can start poking this objective, and we're making sure that the enemy team is not anywhere near being able to secure this objective, right? So it's about that 2-minute 30 mark. Their team knows that they absolutely have to defend this. And our Ninetales does an incredible job by realizing this and going, well, their team's likely to be in the top lane, and if I go to the bottom lane and take away 1 or 2 people, then that means that there's less people in the top lane and our team's more likely to get the top Regieleki. And you can see at this particular point, their team is in all sorts of trouble because that Regieleki goes in. It's 2 seconds, 1 tech until double time. You can see our wait until the double time to get that score in, and our Lucario pretty much does the same thing. Now, unfortunately, throughout this game, I've had some pretty heavy lag spikes, but that's okay. I'm gonna blame my death on that, and I've got a 32-second death timer. But since we are so far ahead, even if the enemy takes the Rayquaza at this time in the game, you're probably going to win, right? Now, hopefully this gameplay makes it, kind of unfolds how you want to use Pikachu, especially the first gameplay. And we're just going to close out by watching how cracked our Lucario is. Here he goes on a bit of a tear. He gets his Shedinja substitute doll to avoid the Parasong and hits his Quadra. So that's awesome, awesome work. Click on one of these videos that are popping up on the screen. Guys, have a good day, and I hope you got some value from this video.